Top Gun Maverick feels the need for speed, and we feel the need for 20 speedy behind-the-scenes facts. Watch until the last one, because we'll reveal a bit of real unplanned destruction that happened on set. But first, Fact 1, over 800 hours of aerial footage was shot. One of the things that makes Top Gun Maverick so special is its use of footage from real fighter jets. Director Joseph Kosinski's view was that you can't have too much footage, so he sent the actors up into the skies for more time than was shot for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. This massive amount of flying took its toll on the cast, and we'll detail how in a fact later in the video. But next, some trivia that shows how the team behind Maverick got shots that look so authentic. Fact 2, flight scenes were shot around real Navy training. During pre-production, cinematographer Claudio Miranda and a small crew joined the USS Abraham Lincoln on a training mission. They researched jet takeoffs and landings, as well as the flight deck and other ship details. Miranda also met with the original Top Gun cinematographer Jeffrey L. Kimball to understand the challenges of shooting on an aircraft carrier, and spoiler alert, there are lots. When it came to shooting for real, the production team was given access to the Lincoln aircraft carrier, as well as the USS Roosevelt. As the original film was such a massive recruiting boost for the Navy, they had no issues this time around opening up their doors to crews and friends. The production team was able to rent out both single-seat and dual-seat F-18 Super Hornets and naval pilots for filming as well. Reportedly, it cost the production over $11,000 per flight hour for that. But all this was only after the cast had completed an intense training program. Fact 3, the actors went through 5 weeks of real flight training. Tom Cruise devised a program himself that would get his new recruits up to speed. It was a comprehensive and demanding 5-month flight training program, which involved around 35 hours of flying time. Cruise would speak to the cast on a nightly basis and give feedback on their progress. As per the legendary actor's instructions, they worked their way up from the Cessna 172 Skyhawk to Extra 300s to the Al-39 Albatross, and then finally to the fabled F-18 Super Hornet. And they say actors are precious. This training and the filming itself really took it out of those not used to flying at over 1,000 miles per hour. Fact 4, all but 2 of the actors threw up during shooting. Due to the massive G-forces that the cast had to face, they were understandably a little shaken by the process, especially their stomachs. At times they had to combat as much as 8G, or 1,600 pounds of force. Everyone vomited while in the cockpit, apart from 2 people. The first makes sense, Tom Cruise, someone who's used to adrenaline-fueled stunts, but the second is more surprising. It was Monica Barbaro's character Phoenix whose stomach survived the process. Cruise might have avoided throwing up on set, but he didn't get everything he was hoping for when making the movie. Fact 5, Tom Cruise was denied the right to fly an F-18. In true Tom Cruise style, he was very keen to do all of his own stunts, including the flight scenes with an F-18 Super Hornet, but the US Navy denied the actor clearance to do so. Although it's not clear why the decision was made, it was most likely to do with insurance and budget concerns. Totaling a real F-18 would have made up roughly half of the Top Gun sequel's budget of $152 million. This would create logistical nightmares for the insurance of the film, as well as for insuring Cruise himself. The flight scenes were instead filmed with real US Navy pilots flying the plane. Although the practical effects on Maverick are impressive, they weren't the only method used to film this adrenaline thrill ride. Fact 6, CGI was used in the movie. The movie has been highly praised for its use of practical filming over computer-generated shots, but this doesn't mean CGI wasn't used in the making of Maverick. It's just done very well. For example, when enemy missiles fire at the fighter jets, these are done using computer-generated images. This is because it would have been extremely dangerous to fire actual missiles at the planes, and it would have been extremely expensive as well. Not to mention a logistical headache of finding a location to shoot these missiles. Then again, if Cruise had his way, I'm sure he would have shot the jets, as well as the budget, to pieces. Fact 7, the beach scene needed to be reshot. In the original Top Gun, the famous shirtless volleyball scene has been a massive talking point since its release in 1986, so there had to be an equivalent in the sequel, and the cast of Maverick felt a massive pressure to match the physiques of Val Kilmer and co. So imagine their dismay when Tom Cruise said he wasn't happy with their bodies for the first shot they did. It meant they had to postpone the second taping a couple of weeks down the line, meaning all the actors needed to get back in the gym and get as cut as possible for more shirtless action. They might have had to do this shot again, but one of the most striking and destructive shots in the movie was only shot once, and we'll reveal this later in our last fact. But back to the beach now, and the reshoot of this scene wasn't the only time when Tom Cruise got his way during filming. Fact 8, Tom Cruise insisted on the director and an old friend. The actor worked with director Joseph Kosinski on 2013's Oblivion, and during this time the two had a great working relationship. Cruise met with Kosinski when he was filming Mission Impossible Fallout to discuss filming for the Top Gun sequel, and not long after, Kosinski was announced as director. His loyalty didn't stop there. Cruise insisted that his old rival Iceman Val Kilmer made an appearance, and sure enough in the film, he makes a memorable cameo cameo, partly thanks to some new technology. Fact 9. Val Kilmer's voice was made using AI. Following the chemotherapy sessions and tracheostomy Kilmer underwent because of his throat cancer treatment, he lost his speaking voice. So the filmmakers produced the actor's voice for the Top Gun sequel using archival footage and an AI-based voice dubbing technique. Sonatic, an AI technology group based in London, developed this technique, and Kilmer has since used it in real life. The tech allowed the actor to be heard briefly in the movie and deliver his important line with Maverick at a crossroads. Fact 10. 3 actors were in the running for Rooster. Miles Teller, Nicholas Hoult and Glen Powell were all lined up to play the son of Goose. They were all flown to Cruise's home to see who had the best chemistry with the lead actor, and Teller won out. But Powell had made such a big impression on Cruise and legendary producer Jerry Bruckheimer, he was given the role of Hangman. He was also given this call sign for a very practical reason, which we'll detail in our next fact, because it was only Teller who had any control when it came to names. Fact 11. Miles Teller was the only recruit who chose their call sign. Teller chose Rooster because of its avian link to his fictional father Goose. He also had the most creative suggestion, so the team were happy to let him stick with it. Glen Powell's initial suggestion of Sniper was rejected because it was already an Air Force call sign. Presumably the other characters already had their signs chosen for them, or they lacked the creativity needed due to being sunk at the bottom of a swimming pool because of Cruise. Fact 12. An F1 great almost featured as a pilot. 7 times Formula 1 world champion Lewis Hamilton was nearly cast as one of Tom Cruise's recruits after the two met on the set of Edge of Tomorrow. The racing legend had always had a need for speed after seeing the original Top Gun as a kid, and he was fixated on flying for the Royal Air Force. Hamilton was happy to be an extra just as long as he could get in the movie, but Cruise offered him one of the bigger roles. Unfortunately for both parties, Hamilton was a little busy with his day job of driving the fastest racing cars on the planet, so he had to politely decline the offer with a phone call. Apparently, according to Hamilton, it was the most upsetting call he ever had to make, but he probably wasn't as upset as Cruise when release delays started to get more out of hand than Maverick's reckless behavior. Fact 13. The release date got delayed and then delayed again. The original release date was July 2019, but the team behind the movie wanted to shoot some more additional action scenes before they were happy with it. This pushed the date to June 2020, before anyone knew what would happen that year. Cruise & Co. could have premiered the movie on streaming services instead, but Maverick himself wasn't happy and insisted they wait until movie theaters could show it in all its glory. After all, the cast didn't do all that working out on the beach not to be shown on a huge screen. Eventually, the movie was shown in cinemas in May 2022, almost 3 years after it was supposed to, but it was worth the wait. Fact 14. The movie was a massive hit for a long time. The movie was released over Memorial Day weekend, and it wasn't surprising that it went in straight away as the #1 film, bringing in $160.5 million domestically over the 4 days of the holiday weekend. What's more surprising was its longevity. It only dropped 29% at the box office in its second weekend. That was the smallest drop of any movie to ever clear $100 million. It took until the film's 11th weekend to fall out of the top 5. Then it was released in more cinemas to go back up to second, and by Labor Day in September, it was back at #1, which meant that it reclaimed the top spot 4 months after it was released. The movie ended up making over a massive $700 million domestically and around $1.5 billion worldwide. Turns out Tom Cruise could have wrecked an F-18 and still had some spare change. But it's a good job he didn't wreck the plane scene at the end of the movie because of our next fact. Fact 15. The P-51 scene at the end belongs to Tom Cruise. Tom might not have got to fly the F-18, but he did get to fly one of his personal planes into the sunset instead. Maverick takes Penny out for a spin in the World War II P-51 Mustang to close out this epic movie. You didn't think that Cruise wasn't going to use his pilot license at some point in the film, did you? Jennifer Connelly, who plays love interest Penny, was a little startled by flames coming out of the engine before takeoff, but once she realized it was all part of the plane's charm, she was happy for Maverick to take her out for a spin. But there was one actor who initially wasn't happy with his role in the movie. Fact 16. Glen Powell disliked his character. Powell had an impressive roll of credits before Top Gun Maverick, but it was this movie that really propelled him into the blockbuster spotlight. The actor was critically acclaimed in the end, but he wasn't keen on Hangman before shooting began. He told GQ in an interview that he saw the character as the movie's equivalent of Draco Malfoy, so he worked hard to make him less two-dimensional and more sympathetic, not to mention slightly more beefed up than the Harry Potter character. And there was another actor who had a change of heart when it came to this blockbuster. Fact 17. Cruise originally didn't want to make the movie. For decades, the leading man wasn't interested in making another Top Gun. Way back in a 1990 interview, he said a sequel would be irresponsible because the movie was an amusement park ride and not a real depiction of the Navy. This led to the massive recruitment drive on semi-false pretenses that we mentioned earlier in the video. However, the star changed his mind, and that had a massive amount to do with the fact that the director had different ideas for the sequel. Fact 18. The director didn't want a number in the title. It was Joseph Kosinski who wanted the Top Gun sequel to be more of a character-driven story. That's why he chose to highlight the story's human themes with the title, rather than just calling it Top Gun 2. In Kosinski's words, Maverick is a drama with this giant action film around it. As Cruise wasn't keen on making a sequel originally, it makes sense that Kosinski would sell the movie not just as an action film, but also picking up the Maverick storyline. Cruise was 100% on board after Kosinski's pitch, and Maverick was made. Fact 19. Miles Teller got sick from jet fuel in his bloodstream. After one of his planned flights, Teller came out in hives and needed to see a doctor. They found that he had blood poisoning, and the results came back that the culprit was jet fuel. When the actor told Tom Cruise on set what had happened, the veteran responded in typical Maverick fashion that he had jet fuel in his blood since he was a kid. Fact 20. The Darkstar Scene was filmed once and wrecked a set. The one scene that sums up the movie is arguably at the beginning of it. The scene when Maverick defies his orders and sends the Darkstar airborne was done for real. A prototype was built specifically for the movie by engineering giants Lockheed Martin, who were responsible for the world's fastest plane, the SR-71 Blackbird. With the shot when the plane takes the roof off the guard station, this was only done once, and the force really caused damage to the building. Visual effects production designer Ryan Tudhope thought the scene justified the approach to shoot as much real footage like this as possible, as this happy accident would never have happened with CGI.